welcome to the Houston edition of TDS Live, the pregame show. I'm your host, Nathan Bond, joined alongside me as always, Seth Varnadore. Seth, the 1-6 South Florida Bulls take on the 4-3 Houston Cougars today at noon Eastern on ESPN2. The Bulls are looking for their first road win since October 26th, 2019. That is a span of 1,099 days. What's changed for you in those 1,099 days?
Well, I realized this the other day. I had a kid. So I have a kid that's never experienced a USF road victory. So that's somewhat disheartening because he's not a newborn. So so that's a little disheartening, I think. But that's probably the biggest. I mean, there's been a lot of things that happened. I mean, the world has totally changed since their last road victory.
Maybe you know what? Maybe USF is the reason why.
We had a catastrophic global pandemic type thing that happened. That was
just mere months later.
That was after, yeah.
Mere months.
Bad.
I mean, seriously, I also had a kid. You know, he's almost 2, so it's unlikely that changes today. If we're going to be completely honest.
No, the line has not moved pretty much from. It maybe moved a little bit off open, but it's been stuck here. I'm looking at it now. The best you can get on either team is at 17.5. So USF is still a 17.5 point underdog. That's plus 100 in certain places, but not kind of places you can get legally. Most of them are plus 17.5, minus 110 to either side. So that's kind of stuck. So I don't think there's been a ton of money either way. So that's kind of what people envision the game being pretty close to that number.
Yeah, I think so too. And, Travis Marsh will get his first start of the season today, and he more than likely will get the starts the rest of the way, assuming nothing else crazy happens as he replaces Gary Bohannon, who was lost for the season early in the Tulane game 2 weeks ago. So it's going to be an interesting kind of dichotomy and see what this offense looks like with Trey Marsh running the show when he's really not the runner that Gary was, and that added offensive dynamic really opened up space and things for Jimmy Horn and Brian Battie and Xavier Weaver. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of where that goes for this offense. What are you looking for specifically from Trey today to at least get a step in the right direction as we wind down this seemingly never-ending football season?
I think you'd probably like to see him just play a clean game, no turnovers. That's been kind of his big issue, right? When he's gotten the chance to play, is he's had some turnovers. I thought last year when he had a chance to play, I thought he started the game pretty well, and then had some turnover stuff that kind of put the game out of reach. So I think that's what you're looking for. Just have him play a clean game. I don't know. Yeah, like you said, I'm not sure if he gives you much in the run game. That's not really his strength. I don't think he's a bad athlete, but it doesn't seem to be kind of a big part of his game. So that'll if he can give you anything there, which I wonder if they're kind of reticent to run him now that you're on your second string quarterback. Maybe you don't want to get to the third string quarterback, right? So
right.
You might be a little hesitant to run him, but I think the biggest thing is just seeing him play a clean game, especially on the road. No turnovers, just play clean. He's got talent. So if he can kind of avoid the big mistake, he'll have a chance to do some things, I think. But that's kind of been his big issue is turnovers. So play clean.
Yeah, you mentioned the start he had last year at ECU in the rain. I think they were up 14-3 at halftime, and then 3 second half interceptions from him really kind of sealed the deal, sealed USF's fate, especially the pick six. That's always been, we mentioned it on the podcast this week, that's always been kind of his issue is protecting the ball. He had a turnover versus Tulane as well. It's just always been kind of his issue. Real quick, so Will Turner's actually in Houston. He's kind of tweeting out some stuff Want to make sure we get some injury updates. No Antonio Greer today. He will be missing, at least the fourth straight game, either due to the unfortunate passing of his father or he broke his hand. So he's still coming back from that. The linebacker DJ Gordon is suited up. He missed Tulane with a concussion. Safety Michaela Point is warming up. Andrew Stokes made the trip and is suited up. Jaron Mangum did not travel. Kelly Joyner Jr. is also back in action and hopefully ready to get Seth more than negative 0.9 points.
Let's get a point. Let's just start, baby steps. 1 point.
Yeah, so lots to discuss. Houston has put up 50 points on USF in 3 consecutive outings, dating back to 2019, I suppose. They've really had USF's number basically ever since that 2017 De'Aaron King game, the 4th and 24, as we all know it. That was really kind of set off basically the downward spiral that USF has kind of been on over the last 4 years. Clayton Tune completing 65% of his passes, 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, while USF has been pretty good at creating some havoc, getting turnovers, fumbles, sacks. They're going to be hard pressed to do that again today, where despite everything else going on in Houston, Clayton Tune seems to really protect the ball.
Yeah, and just real quick, the line has moved a little bit since we came on. There's a couple 17s out there now, so the line is moving down a little bit, which I would assume means people
Somebody
think
knows
USF might cover. Yeah, so the line's starting to move down a little bit as we get closer to kickoff. So maybe they were looking for injury updates and kind of got them on the field here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this is you're gonna have to win the turnover battle, win the explosive play battle. You win those, you'll have a chance to win the game. I don't think they're going to kick the ball off to Brian Batiste after last year, but we'll see. I'm sure they've spent a lot of time getting prepared for that. But yeah, you're in a tough spot here against a Houston team that's had a bunch of success against you. They're not going to come in. I don't think they're going to come in very nervous about this game.
No,
with how they've played you the past few years, and I think Clayton Tune's has he been the quarterback for all those big numbers?
At least 2 of them, I'm fairly certain.
Yeah. So he's not. I don't think he's too nervous either.
Yeah, De'Aaron King was the 2018 game where I think it was like 56-21. I think he shook the entire team like 5 times on some touchdown runs.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah, it's been an uphill climb ever since 2002, I guess, when USF last beat them 32-14 when they picked off their quarterback 7 times. So, maybe there's that
performance. Yeah, there you go. You'll need
20 years later.
That's winning the turnover battle, probably right there. I would imagine they won that one.
Right, and the key thing: turnovers, third downs. Houston's completing nearly 50% of their third downs, which is damn near impressive. It compared to USF's 37.5 on offense. USF's allowing 43% of their third downs on defense to be converted, which is 106th in the nation. Houston's not they're pretty much the same. They're 44%. So I would have felt a little bit more comfortable with Gary at quarterback than I do Trey Marsh. It's the ultimate question mark of what are we actually going to see. Trey's been the practice player, the guy that has all the tools, the 6'5", 230-pound rocket arm, but he hasn't been able to put it together when the lights come on. That's going to be the issue again today. Much like this whole season, it's I'll believe it when I see it with this quarterback, with this team.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to go. I'll throw up a couple. If people didn't watch live on the podcast, we'll throw up some stats here for everyone to look at. We'll throw up Parker's preview first. Red is bad. Blue is good. You see, USF's got some blue and some white is perfectly neutral,
Perfectly acceptable.
perfectly acceptable. There's some of that on offense. There's not a lot on defense. They've done all right against the passes, but that's because teams don't need to pass. So I think there's a little bit of a selection issue there, as our friend Parker would say. This projection is with Bohannon in the lineup because these are based. They don't take into account injuries. So just looking at this, you see why the line's at 17.5. There's going to be some struggles, but it's not like Houston's defense is unbelievable. They allow a lot of quality drives. You see this equal rate number. Let's make this a little bit bigger. At the equal rate number at 58.3, that's basically almost 60% of drives against Houston end up being quality drives. So teams are able to take it down and get past their own 40. But they've done a pretty good job at limiting points on those. So that'll be big. And then you see the third and fourth down success offensively, not bad for USF. Houston hasn't been great. And then the other side of the ball, yikes. Third and fourth down success. Houston's been pretty good. USF not quite as good, and pretty bad everywhere on defense. And I think that's kind of the issue. There was times last week I think I even said it in Slack that if Bohannon was playing the rest of the year, I think a lot of the games were not toss-ups, but were winnable with how the offense was playing. You might be able to win some shootouts against some of these teams. You're seeing Tulsa not look very good. You're seeing Houston kind of plays with their food a little bit, and maybe the offense can kind of carry you in a shootout. But without Bohannon, without knowing what you're going to get offensively, you don't feel real great about this one. I think if he was playing, you'd feel like you had a puncher's chance, but without him and without knowing exactly what you're going to get, I think you're in for a rough one today.
Yep, and Houston's 4-3. They're 2-1 in the conference. It's a pretty deceptive 4-3. The teams that they've lost to have been halfway decent teams, right? So they lose to Texas Tech, the middle school in Lubbock. They're halfway decent. We like their head coach. And then they lost to Kansas when Jalen Daniels was. That's his name, right? Jalen.
Yeah,
Daniels?
I believe so.
He was kind of at his peak before he got hurt. Like that Kansas team was a legitimate top 25 team. And they got smoked at Kansas versus Kansas. And then they lost to Tulane in overtime. And Tulane is a very good team, very capable of winning this conference. I think they're, 1, 2, 3 in that area with Cincinnati. Shit, you may even put ECU in there at this point. They coming off that was a pretty impressive win over BYU last night. They're just kind of rolling along. It's interesting, but Houston's still firmly in the mix. They have SMU next week. Then they have Temple, ECU, and then Tulsa to round out the rest of their schedule. Their November looks, pretty favorably with some pretty winnable games. I think 2 on the road, 2 at home. But this Houston team it's a lot better than I think a lot of people may be giving them credit for. And when you have a guy like Tank Dell, who is literally, he's the only guy with more than 20 catches on this team. He has 51 catches, 627 yards, and 8 touchdowns for this Cougars offense. He is the guy. He is the one thing that if you can stop him, you have a fighter's chance. I don't believe USF's going to have a real good shot at stopping them. They're pretty creative in how they get him the ball. And as always, revenge factor. Tank Dell went off last year against USF. He should have been a bowl. We've talked about it multiple times since that fateful time when USF just decided not to offer him because he was too small. And he's made a point to stick it to USF since that happened. And I expect nothing less from Tank because that's just the kind of player he is. He's an absolute animal, and good luck to this USF secondary trying to stop him.
Yeah, you're gonna have to have somebody win some one-on-ones, I'd imagine, and that has not been a strength so far this season. The Houston offense has kind of started to. They kind of lagged a little bit, but they're starting to kind of last two games 5.72 yards per play, 6.89 yards per play against Navy. I think the offense is kind of getting it turned around here a little bit. They were never bad. Their worst they were 4.5 yards per play against UTSA in the opener. Every other game besides Tulane was a 4.73 is their next worst game. But I think they have some matchup or kind of provide some matchup issues against USF. And Tank Dell is probably the biggest among those. So here's another kind of stat sheet here. This has some more a little bit different look. So you have yards per play margin. So yards per play on offense minus your yards per play on defense. If you're negative, that means your defense, right, is giving up more yards per play than your offense gets. USF's 103rd in that. Houston's 72nd, so not great. Where Houston is quite a bit better than USF is in success rate, which is play to play, down to down. Do you have successful plays or not? So not really explosiveness. Like EPA per play up here adds in some explosiveness. You see Houston's even better than that than they are on success rate. So that adds explosiveness on EPA. But success rate is just, if you need 3 yards to pick up a first down, did you pick up at least 3 yards, right? Or on first down, are you picking up 4 or more yards? It's just these benchmarks that consider a play successful or not. How often are you having those successful plays? So that's kind of a good measure of down to down, kind of what kind of a team is normally. Houston is 51st. Then you look at offensively, they're 45th. Defensively, they're 69th. USF is 53rd on offense, so pretty good, pretty close to Houston, but defensively, down to down, 123rd in the country. So that kind of tracks with what we've seen all year. And I just don't know like we've said, with the quarterback change, if USF can keep up. They have the skill guys to do it, and the offensive line's playing well.
Right.
But I don't know if they have – Houston's okay against the run. They're pretty decent against the pass. They're above average against the pass, okay against the run. But, I don't know. And USF is one of the top rushing teams. But how does missing Bohannon in the running game affect that? I think that's kind of the big thing. If they can run the ball without Bohannon and kind of the misdirection they were able to use with him, then they've got a chance in the game. But he seemed to be a really big part of that.
Yeah, I think there's going to need to be a little bit more window dressing. I know you want to keep things as simple as possible for the backup quarterback, but I think there's going to need to be a little bit more shifting, a little bit more motion, getting Jimmy Horn, moving a lot of, jet actions, things like that to kind of free that up. Because we've talked about, this season, how Jared Mangum and Gary Bohannon kind of occupy the same space, so to speak, in the run game, kind of up the middle, kind of bruiser. They don't have that now. So I want to figure out how they attack this Houston rush defense without your big back. Is Kawan Powell going to get a little bit more run, or are they just going to try to keep things to the outside and maybe use Petit up the middle a few times? That's where the chess match, so to speak. That's where I'm excited to see what trick it kind of comes up with here today.
Yeah, we'll see if a guy like Horn is back and fully healthy, which you feel like he would be. He seemed pretty good against Tulane, and even though his injury like history week to week has been bizarre this year, but with the bye, you'd have to think he's doing pretty well. So maybe you see him with the jet sweep, that kind of window dressing where we're actually giving it to him, not just using him as a decoy on those. That kind of stuff can kind of open you up a little bit. Maybe get some safeties to come up and come up to try to play the run game, and then you can get shots to Weaver over the top. Those are the kind of things, and they're going to have to take advantage of those situations when they present themselves. So when they dial a play up, they got to hit it. That's one thing they've been doing recently is when they dialed one up, they've hit it. That was kind of the big problem the last couple of years. They dial some good stuff up, and they would miss it, and that was kind of the issue early in the year. They were missing some shots they had dialed up. Lately, they've been hitting them, and you see how much better the offense is. So if Marsh can hit him, he hit one last week to Dukes. There was a dialed-up play. If he can hit some of those, then that's where you have your chance to kind of move the ball offensively, I think. So
Right.
he just got to make the plays when they're there and not make any big mistakes. And then that's your shot to win the game. I think you got to win. I don't think they're winning a low scoring game, right?
No,
that
You're-
would be
what's low scoring with this USF defense? Like 40 points?
Yeah, it has not been great. So that's kind of the the recipe, right? You're going to have to play well on offense to win because your defense is giving up 37.6 points a game, 126 in the country. Just look that up. So
that is
Charlotte is getting up 43.3 points per game.
And they fired their head coach.
They did fire their head coach, yes.
And shout out to FIU. They're now 4-4, and they're 2 wins away from being bowl eligible. Who would have thunk it?
I mean, I went over in the preseason. So this is exactly what I envisioned.
Rub it in, man. Jeez Louise.
But yeah, so it can be done. Their schedule is obviously not real difficult, but relative to what they were bringing back last year, it's interesting to see them kind of make that big jump this year.
Yeah, must be nice. Yeah. All right, we are 8 minutes away from kickoff here. We will wrap up the show so we can get set up in our comfy chairs and watch this football game
on ESPN2, not on
ESPN2.
It's actually on TV,
no, on cable.
Streaming, yes.
You don't have to, unless you like to stream your football. I will be watching on cable because I am that person who hates the lag so much that I can't stand it when it's streamed. But Seth, let's we do this every week. You want to stick with your prediction? You picked Houston to win 41-20.
Yeah, let's stay with it.
Okay. And I picked Houston to win 55-23. I'll stick with it as well. Again, if this is a very good offense that USF's defense is going up against, and I don't trust that they can stop them that many times.
No, I'm kind of the 41. It's a little bit above their season average, USF season average defensively, but also hopefully if you can have some success running the ball, maybe you can hold the ball and limit possessions a little bit. But I think there is definitely the potential to get up to your score there. It could get really ugly. Not that, a 21 point loss is much better, but
you lose and you don't cover. What a slap in the face.
Yeah, I don't see them covering. I don't know if the offense is good. But hey, man, we've seen some weird things with this group. They always seem to cover one that you don't think they're going to out of nowhere. But maybe that was just a Florida game and they're done with that. So who knows?
Who knows? All right. Well, for Seth, I've been Nathan Bond. We'll be back here at halftime to discuss the first half, and then we'll also do the post-game show. Be sure to check us out. Thanks for tuning in. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.